Hi, it's Patrick Hutzel from Intensive Care at Home, where we provide tailor-made solutions for long-term ventilated adults and children with tracheostomies and otherwise medically complex patients by improving their quality of life, and where we also provide tailor-made solutions to hospitals and intensive care units to save money and resources whilst providing quality care. In the last week's blog, I shared Budget 2018 spinal muscular atrophy drug Spinraza to be added to the Pharmaceutical Benefits Scheme PBS in Australia. You can check out last week's episode by clicking on the link below this video. In this week's blog, I want to share more about how we provide services at home as a genuine alternative to a long-term stay in intensive care. And the title this week of the blog is How to Live Independently at Home with Mechanical Ventilation and Other Medically Complex Conditions. We know what our clients need and what they want. They want to live as independently as they can outside of the confinements of ICU, pediatric ICU, or neonatal ICU, irrespective of their real or perceived limitations. We also know what we are capable in delivering on our clients' needs, wants, and some of their deepest desires. They want to be at home and they don't want to be tied to a bed in intensive care where they don't have any quality of life or quality of end of life. It sounds simple and it sounds like we are fulfilling a basic human need to be in an environment where our clients feel safe and comfortable. It doesn't matter whether our clients are on a ventilator long term, if they have a tracheostomy long term, or if they have other medically complex conditions, such as regular seizures and otherwise medically complex conditions that require ICU nurses in the home up to 24 hours a day, 365 days and nights a year. Unfortunately, there seems no shortage of long-term ventilated patients in ICU, pediatric ICU, or neonatal ICU that are unnecessarily confined to the walls of an intensive care unit and an intensive care bed that costs taxpayers $5,000 per bed a day. There is also no shortage of other critically ill patients needing those blocked ICU, pediatric ICU, or neonatal ICU beds that could be easily freed up by having intensive care at home nurses who have the skills, knowledge, and expertise to make a frictionless transition home from ICU or PICU or neonatal ICU possible for those patients. We therefore can create win-win situations for all stakeholders by improving the quality of life or quality of end of life for mechanically ventilated, tracheostomized, and otherwise medically complex adults, children, and toddlers in a safe, holistic, patient and family-friendly environment. We thereby reduce the cost of an ICU, pediatric ICU, and neonatal ICU bed by more than 50%. We therefore free up scarce, expensive, and in-demand ICU, pediatric ICU, or neonatal ICU beds. Moreover, here at Intensive Care at Home, we have created standards for intensive care at home services that are not available elsewhere in Australia by number one, being the first third-party accredited intensive care at home service in Australia. We have built and developed significant intellectual property whilst pioneering intensive care at home services in Australia, and we have in the process become the market leader in this space. You can check out our section about accreditation and quality. Number two, by providing services according to best international practice according to the home mechanical ventilation guidelines, which makes a transition from ICU, pediatric ICU or neonatal ICU to home frictionless and also possible much earlier compared to current outdated ICU, pediatric ICU or neonatal ICU paradigms and perceptions. Again, you can check out the home mechanical ventilation guidelines on our website. Number 3, by constantly improving and developing our services by working with doctors, nurses, our clients and their families, we have become highly responsive and responsible to their individual needs by keeping them out of ICU, pediatric ICU and neonatal ICU, therefore saving Australian taxpayers huge amounts of money whilst also freeing up in-demand ICU, PICU and NICU beds. By doing so, we also enable our clients and their families spending time together at home despite the real or perceived limitations of our clients. Also, we enable our clients and their families to be reintegrated back to society at a much faster pace. We therefore enable our clients and their families to contribute to society. For example, parents are able to go back to work rather than quitting jobs because they spend day and night in ICU or PICU or NICU. To illustrate this even further, we have been providing services to numerous clients over the last few years, and our client base is constantly growing. At this point, I also want to send my thoughts to Peter Bertram and his wife Elaine, who after 4 years still have their little daughter Anna Carolina living in the pediatric ICU at Starship Hospital in Auckland, New Zealand. The way this family has been dealt with is absolutely disgraceful, and after over 4 years, the health authorities in New Zealand still can't get their act together to fund intensive home care for little Anna Carolina. Anna Carolina and her family would be so much better off at home. Whilst in the meantime, Anna Carolina's care has cost at least $8 million in ICU, whereas at home with a service like intensive care at home, the cost could have been at least reduced by 50%. I have shared Anna Carolina's and her parents' story last year, and you can read more about it by clicking on the links below this video. So if you want to find out how we can help you to get your loved one out of intensive care, including palliative care or long-term acute care, also out of a nursing home, or if you find that you have insufficient support for your loved one at home on a ventilator or tracheostomy, if you want to know how to get funding for our service, or if you have any questions, please send me an email to patrick@intensivecareathome.com. That's Patrick just with a K at the end, or call me on one of the numbers on the top of the website. Also, have a look at our career section. We are currently hiring ICU, pediatric ICU and neonatal ICU nurses for clients in Melbourne and South Gippsland in Victoria. We are also an NDIS, TAC and DVA approved community service provider in Australia. We have been part of the Royal Melbourne Health Accelerator program for innovative healthcare companies last year. Thank you for tuning into this week's blog. This is Patrick Hutzel from Intensive Care at Home, and I'll see you again next week in another update.